Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Final Tackle podcast. And we are joined by a very special guest. He was the 1999 number one AFL draft pick, Josh Fraser. Thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Nah, mate, pleasure's all mine. So let's get stuck into it. Your junior days, grassroots, whatever you want to call it, with Mansfield and Murray Bushrangers. What was it like growing up and playing in that district competition?
My pathway into the AFL was probably not dissimilar to most. I mean, I loved playing footy from such a young age. Some of the best times in my sporting journey, I guess, was my junior days where footy's everything to a young boy or girl at the moment in the current climate.
Hey, isn't that amazing, the AFLW and how far that's come?
It's unbelievable, and it's you only probably wish it was the same way, when you were coming through as a junior, because you can only imagine where that women's competition would be now. But it's
Oh,
a very
exactly.
exciting path that the young girls are on currently. But I love junior footy. Grew up in Mansfield, northeast Victoria, and I was just one of those kids that couldn't get enough of footy. I grew up on a farm, so when I wasn't sort of helping dad around the farm on my sort of spare time, I had the footy in my hand and I was
And you had the height for it.
yeah, that's right. So setting up goalposts and kicking goals and all that sort of stuff, all the stuff that most AFL players or aspiring AFL players do. So really fortunate. I was at a great club, Mansfield Footy Club's a terrific footy club. And look, I was fortunate enough to work my way through some of those development pathways and find myself at the Murray Bushrangers in the TAC Cup Under-18 competition. And from there, found myself at the Magpies. But yeah, as I said, some of my fondest moments or memories of my sporting journey was playing junior footy at Mansfield.
Yeah, and well, if you like, tell us some of the highlights and some of your favorite memories of playing for Mansfield. Is there like a specific game or a specific time when you played for them that sticks out in your memory?
Oh, we played finals. We had a reasonable side, so I remember playing finals, and to go across the Shepparton and play finals on a ground like the Deakin Reserve. You got to remember as a 12, 13, 14 year old and travelling to play footy on a good venue, that was quite exciting at the time.
Mm.
So, we had some really good matches against what we used to term our rivals in Shepparton East at the time, and so you know, Mansfield, I remember mainly, some of my best memories were just spending the whole day at the footy club. So you'd play your junior footy and you'd be there the whole day, right
And
through
you
all
watch
the
the
April,
reserves and all that
the
sort of
whole
stuff.
lot. Yeah, yeah. So that's awesome. And now living in the city in Melbourne, I noticed the difference with that. So country footy very much still has that ingrained in them, your juniors and your seniors, and it's a little bit more detached in the metropolitan leagues.
Mm.
So that's an interesting thing to observe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the community aspect of country footy, and Mansfield was a great footy club, as I mentioned. And I guess the fondest memories were just playing with my mates, getting to go and play on different grounds, getting to travel, playing against some of our bigger rivals, and we
Getting
played
the win over them.
getting a win over them. And you can imagine for anyone that's been to Mansfield, it's middle of winter, pretty cold, just the foothills of Mount Buller. So
Yeah.
um,
Not
yeah,
fun.
those,
Or,
yeah,
or,
those,
or fun, depending which way you look at it.
yeah, no, it was all right. It was okay, but you can imagine the sort of mornings we were playing in, quite brisk and cold, but
Mm.
loved every minute of it. Yeah, just love footy.
No, absolutely, that's great. And obviously, the playing in the TAC Cup under 18s brought you to the pinnacle of your AFL career, being the number one draft pick for the '99 season for Collingwood. First of all, what was it like being that number one draft pick? And were you told like prior, like on the day of, or was it as they say and as you see it on TV? Like you find out when we find out, sort of thing. And what was it like for you, first of all, on the day, and also dealing with that as a, for lack of a better term, possible burden throughout the season?
Yeah, so my draft year, I remember obviously there was a lot of talk about potentially going number one,
Hmm.
and I didn't necessarily get any indication from Collingwood that they would take me, and I think Fremantle had maybe two of the next five picks or whatever it might
Yeah,
have
they
been. They
did.
had
Yeah.
a pretty early hand in the draft, so they said to me that if Collingwood didn't take me, I would have gone to Perth, so I would have
Okay.
been playing for Fremantle. But Collingwood didn't give me a lot of indication. I think right up until the eve of the draft, and it became a little bit clearer. So that was yeah, that was an incredible time, really. I think in some ways achieving a goal and a dream to be drafted to an AFL club, probably to share it with friends and family, and a community in Mansfield was great. Um, but I didn't necessarily feel the burden at
Okay.
that point in time. I was quite
You were
excited
just
and
stoked to make an AFL team, sort of
just
thing.
just stoked to be drafted. Yeah, I really was. And look, I think from memory, I really did want to go as that number one pick. That was something I wanted, and
That's also a dream as well.
well, yeah, well, early days it was absolutely, and I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit later. But the first couple of years, I was really naive to the pressure and the burden and the expectation that you touched on, and that was probably some of the best times for me, when you really just don't have much idea of what's going on outside of the external footy club, and you're just focused on what you're doing, and then you start to feel a bit of pressure, and you start to hear some criticism. You're maybe not meeting expectations, and then, as you mentioned, that burden becomes quite real. And I was probably one player that, as I sit here now and reflect, I probably didn't handle it that well.
Okay. And if you don't mind me asking, by all means, you don't have to answer if you don't want to. But how did you deal with that burden once you realized, or not really realized, but started feeling like it was a possible burden for you?
Yeah, no, I didn't deal with it that well, and I think one of the things now in my coaching, I've got a much better handle on being able to have conversations with players and help them work through any difficulties. So for me, it became really a fear of failure and a performance um, anxiety type of thing, and
Okay.
wanting to go out there and sort of make sure I met everyone else's expectations. And um, I never really found any ways to narrow my focus. I never really communicated how much I was struggling with it at different times.
Okay.
So the Monday to Friday stuff I was fine with because I was
Yeah.
training, and there's no real critique of your training as such. You're just out there and you're trying to get yourself ready to perform,
Yep.
and that anxiety would slowly build through the week. And then it had, what I would look back now, it really had an adverse effect on match day performances. And look, it ebbed and flowed a little bit. I feel like at times I was able to manage it reasonably well. And I do remember running out at different stages, and my thought process was put yourself back at Mansfield, put yourself back, and you're just going out and playing footy like you always
Yep.
have. And that was,
And was it on those days that you were thinking that you played better?
um, I couldn't tell you if I played better, but I just found like there for a period of time, it sort of calmed me a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I think it took me too long into my career to actually seek out some help and talk to different people and find ways through that. And that's just a normal journey of a
Yeah.
footballer. Some players can handle it better than others. No doubt the pressure that comes with being a number one pick is real.
Oh,
Anyone that says it's
absolutely.
not,
In
yeah,
any sport, absolutely.
of course it is, and that's fine. That's what it is. That's what you sign up for.
Yep.
So I'm not bitter about that. I'd probably more disappointed in myself that I probably didn't find ways to deal with it sooner.
No, that's fair. That's fair enough. And to anyone who, may be going through such similar extreme things or extreme thought patterns, whether it's, fear of failure or whatever, I'll link any type of, services that need to be addressed in the description to anyone who's listening when this episode goes up. Is there any sort of organizations that you would recommend?
Look, to be honest, the thing that worked for me, and I know we're much better educated now than what maybe we were 10, 15 years ago. And
Yep.
there are some significant organisations that can really help people deal with those things. And for me, it was more finding my own way a little bit, which wasn't necessarily healthy, but probably just discovering some. I'm not sure courage is the right word, but getting myself to a point where I was comfortable to go and speak to someone about how I was feeling.
Gotcha. Okay.
Footy clubs now are so much better in that space,
Yeah.
just fantastic, So the club's almost proactive towards the player, whereas when I started, it was more the player had to be proactive. And I don't even think mental health was spoken about, to be honest, when I started.
No. Okay.
So it was not a taboo topic, but it
No.
just wasn't as in vogue as what it is now. And I think having that self-awareness, I guess, to reach out and speak to people and find a support network that can help you through those difficult times. It's easier said than done,
Oh, absolutely.
but that worked for me for a while.
No, that's good. So find your why sort of thing. Do you reckon? Is that a
Yeah,
good summary of that?
yeah. Look, I mean, we had a sports psychologist at the club, Simon Lloyd, who he's now the football manager at Geelong, and he was one person that helped me through 2 or 3 year period there where I was really struggling. And really, what it was just sitting down with him and talking through how I was feeling and discovering why I was feeling that way. And he was probably the one that I guess brought it out in me a little bit. And that's the first step to um, getting yourself back on track, sort of acknowledging that you might be struggling in a few areas.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, enough of that topic because that's honestly, I think, everything that we could cover for that so far. Unless is there more that you would like to talk about with that topic, or you're good to continue?
No, not specifically. I mean, I don't sit here pretending that what I went through was any different to anyone else. It's I think it's you live and learn, and as I said, in the fortunate position I've been in for the last 7 years to coach, I feel like I come from a really strong position where I've got some empathy for the struggles that players go through, and probably dialed in to being more proactive with having those conversations with them to see how they're travelling.
Oh, absolutely. You would definitely be a massive help at any club you're at, which brings up the topic of you're currently these days with Carlton and their VFL program. What exactly is your role there? And yeah, talk about that.
Yeah, so I was with Carlton for the last 5 years, and
Hmm.
then when COVID
Oh,
hit, I was one of a number of casualties in the footy industry. So my employment there finished up along with at that time what was a VFL alignment. So
yep.
Carlton Reserves aligning with the Northern Bull Ants. So that alignment finished, my employment finished, but my role was purely around development. So working with in essence, the whole list around developing their game, and the other part of that role was coaching their VFL team on a weekend. So, love the role. Really love working with players. For me, I had the best of both worlds. You work with individuals to help improve them
Hmm.
individually, and then you get the chance to coach a collective group on a weekend, which I love the match day stuff as well. So that finished up in March last year.
Hmm.
COVID was a shocking time for everyone.
Oh, it was. It
You
was.
know, so and footy industry wasn't immune. So there's a number of really quality people and coaches that unfortunately lost their positions. Um, so during last year, I was one of probably 4 or 5 people that saw the demise of the Northern Bull Ants as
Yep.
a result of Carlton ending the alignment. And Northern Bull Ants is a club that's nearly 140 years of age in the
Mm.
Victorian Footy League,
Yep.
and it was basically on its knees. And I was one of a group of people that thought this thing's worth saving, and let's see if it's possible to try and keep it alive. So, cut a long story short, after a lot of hard work and really incredible people behind it, we've been able to keep that footy club alive
Oh, wow. That's
in the
amazing.
VFL, and I'm coaching them this year in their return to being a standalone club.
Oh, that's awesome. And how are they going so far?
It's been well. We've been going okay. I mean, as you can imagine, it's our first year back on our own. We've got an incredible young playing list. Footy clubs had to work really hard, not only on field but off field, to find corporate support and
Mm,
membership, and everything you could imagine would go into starting a sporting organisation. We've had to deal with. So we had
absolutely.
our first win on the weekend.
Hey, good on ya. Who was
Yeah,
that against?
ironically, it was against Carlton. Um,
Wow.
So, but look, we feel like we've been building towards it,
Oh,
and as I said,
absolutely.
we've got a really young group, but I'm enjoying working with them, and we'll see what happens after this year. But I was really committed to try and help the footy club get themselves off the ground this season.
That's absolutely awesome. And again, it's kind of maybe a bit of a full circle that you guys defeated Carlton as your first win. So that's amazing. Going back to a bit of your playing time in 2000, it was your debut season. Um, Played 21 games for Collingwood, and you got the best and fairest for Collingwood, and it was your first year. What was the whole first season like for you?
Yeah, so I won I think my first year was the best first year player
Yeah.
award.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, so no, it was incredible. I mean, again, I was really naive to everything as well. So I came in full of confidence. not cockiness, but I was confident. I wanted to play from the get go. I guess in hindsight, I probably wish I hadn't have. I wish I had have spent some time potentially developing in the reserves for a little while. But at the same time, I mean, an opportunity presents and you want to grab hold of it.
Yep.
So I was really thankful for that. Mick Malthouse was the coach of Collingwood, an unbelievable coach, really successful. Playing with the likes of Nathan Buckley, Gavin Brown, Scott Burns, Anthony Rocker. I mean, the list goes
A
on.
whole
So,
list. Like that list was my childhood.
yeah.
Was watching them play.
Well, we had an incredible side, and when you think about the footy club finished on the bottom of the ladder in 1999 and played in a grand final in 2002.
Or played two grand finals.
Two grand finals.
Yeah.
So, that actual side, we don't have the premiership medallion to show for it, but that was a pretty special.
Well, it's amazing to just make the grand final, given you were the Spooners of just a few years beforehand.
Agree. Yeah, agree. And look, Mick should take a lot of credit as the coach at the time, but also the playing group. I think the way we gelled and came together was incredible. The footy club was really just starting to grow and explode. I think the stuff Eddie Maguire was doing
Yep.
to build the profile of the club and to ensure its sustainability. I mean, I've got so much time and respect for Ed. I just think he gets a raw deal often.
He does. He does.
He does, but I don't know if anyone's matched in terms of a club. I don't think anyone's matched the contribution he's made to a footy club in terms of what he was able to do for Collingwood. And he's a fantastic person, very supportive. Things were building, and I was really, again, I'm fortunate to be a part of it. Like I sit here right now and talk about some of the challenges I had, but being a part of the Collingwood Footy Club, playing with some unbelievable players, being coached by one of the great coaches, and being a part of, as they call the Collingwood Army for 10, 11 years, I was really fortunate, and I'm really proud of that time.
What team did you follow growing up, though? Was it Collingwood?
No, I barracked for Geelong.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I think I've always barracked for Geelong. I can't actually tell you why. Might have had something to do with Gary Ablett Senior, being the champion player he was. But yeah, I always barracked for the Cats. But when the draft rolled around, I wasn't. I need to play for Geelong. I want to play.
Yeah, you're just like, whoever I go to.
Wherever I go, mate. I just want to play AFL.
Nah, that's it. But that's really interesting to find out, because a lot of players, usually end up playing for the team that they followed. But it's interesting to find out that you followed a different team. And 2010, unfortunately, was your last season with Collingwood. Unfortunately, didn't play in the grand final. However, I would like to ask about the vibe around the team that year, because we do know in hindsight, it was a grand final winning year for Collingwood. What type of vibe was in the club around that year and for most of the season? Because they say that there's, the winning attitude and, you get on that role of positivity. Was that sort of vibe there with the club that season?
Yeah, it was. There was just an invincibility around the group. There was a belief that every week they or we could go out and play our way and we could beat anyone in front of us. And I was part of that for maybe half the season, the first half, and then fell out of favour through injury and a few other factors. But, I remember watching them play when I was out of the team, and I was so envious that I just wanted to be part of it, because they were playing a brand of footy that, was really just setting the standard throughout the competition. So
yeah, it was.
Yeah, and you felt like each week went past, something more was building and heading towards finals, and you just got the sense that the timing was right, and the group that was out there was gelling. And it's funny, like you look at 2010, and if not for a bounce of the ball, St Kilda probably wins that first game.
I absolutely agree. I've always said that,
which is,
if there was extra time like there is now, St Kilda would have won it that day, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, I remember that ball going inside 50, and I think Benny Johnson was one side of the footy and Stephen Milne was the other, and it only had to bounce Stephen Milne's way and he was going to kick a goal. And I think it might have even bounced out of bounds. Like, it just took one of those crazy sort of dog leg bounces. And the game finishes in a draw. And then the way, again, like sitting here now as a coach, and I didn't appreciate this much at the time as a player, but sitting here now as a coach and looking back how, Mick and Eddie and the whole footy club handled that draw, and then the following week, I'm not surprised that the club went out and got the result they did.
Exactly. Like the game of day, like word vomit of the actual, not the replays. So the first game, it was a bit of a tense moment, but that whole week following in the like for the replay, as a Collingwood fan myself, I had nothing but confidence in the team, even though I will always say I believe if there had been a bit of extra time, Saints would have won it that day on game day one. But game
Yeah.
day two, Collingwood just come out and they were just so, like you were saying, that confident of invincibility. They had that vibe of we're going to win this no matter what, and then they blew them out of the water.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it was, the irony in all of it is that bounce of the ball in the first grand final. The law of averages suggests it bounced into Stevie Milne's hands and he kicks a goal and St Kilda win. But footy has a funny way too of, sorting itself out. And yeah, you're right. So after that drawn grand final, I just got the sense there was no way that we were going to lose that second one. And I think the performances indicated that. So yeah, really incredible time for the club. I remember post game, I think I'm not sure exactly where I was driving, but we was heading sort of down Swan Street Way, and the sea of people and the black and white scarves and flags, and it was just incredible to look back on now. And again, at the time, I was probably didn't fully appreciate it, and I was probably still a little bit disappointed that I wasn't part of it in many respects. But looking back at it now, it was just an incredible time for the footy club.
Well, that's true, but also a lot of players sometimes aren't, in the team, whether it's due to injury or whatever, when it comes to finals time. But every single player that plays even one game in a grand final season has everything to do with the club during those, grand final seasons, such as Richmond and Collingwood. So you definitely played a massive part of the team, even though it may not have been during finals footy. Um, so first of all, thank you very much for being part of that team that got us to the grand final that year.
I appreciate it, mate. And yeah, look, it wasn't, Shane O'Brien missed out, Tarkin Lockyer, I think Leon Davis missed out.
He missed out on the second one, on the replay, yeah.
In the replay, Simon Prestigiacomo. So there was some unbelievable. I think Scotty Burns might have retired the year earlier too. Like Scotty Burns is a champion of that footy club. So, and Bucks, I think he might have been in the coach's box that day. So, everyone. I guess everyone tends to at times think about your own personal situation. I was probably guilty of that in the moment, but you live and learn, and you look back, and you're just thrilled to have been a part of it in some way. And look, it's not the same. You can't sit there and say that you're a part of it and you didn't play. It doesn't feel the same. It certainly doesn't. But I agree in the sense that I think it takes a whole playing list,
whole squad. Yep.
Yeah, to achieve some success. And although it's not the same, and a select group get to represent the club, I think most players on that list in that year can look back and say that they were a part of something special.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And talking about Buckley, what was he like as a teammate?
Incredibly driven. He was the first when I'd been drafted and turned up to Victoria Park. He was the first player I ran into. I think he might have been entering the club at the same time. I was, I wouldn't say I was in awe, but, I was almost pinching myself. The first person you meet is Nathan Buckley. And watching the way he went about his footy, I'm not sure if I've seen anyone go about it in a similar way. He had an intensity about him. He had a professionalism about him. He probably didn't always connect with his teammates because he was so driven and potentially couldn't quite understand why others weren't the same, which, I can respect now too. I sort of can see that as well.
Like he put in his extras and wondered why some weren't doing extras, sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think it all came from a place of just great intentions. He wanted the footy club to be successful, and he probably more than most of the playing group had an idea of what that should look like. So in many respects, he was ahead of his time.
Yeah.
So he was dealing with a lot of guys who, probably didn't quite see a vision or see how to get to that vision.
Mm-hmm.
And he was frustrated that they couldn't buy into what he saw. And I respect that, and I can see how that would play out. But he's a quality person. Like he's a terrific person, incredibly driven. I think he's improved himself over a long period of time, particularly when he went into the coaching ranks. He became more empathetic, more understanding. And yeah, I don't have any bad things to say about Bucks. I think he's champion of the game. He's a champion of Collingwood, and I think the way he handles himself, you know, probably sets a standard and sets a tone for everyone. I think he's incredibly classy in the way he deals with things.
Absolutely, and I agree tenfold. I had the pleasure of meeting him when I was a kid watching Collingwood, and it's just, made me in awe. Like you said, you were in awe when you met him on your first day at Collingwood. I was in awe from the first moment that I met him, really. Now, Anzac Day games. Obviously, before there was multiple games on Anzac Day, there was the traditional and still is the traditional Collingwood Essendon. You played in a few of them. First of all, is there any memorable one in particular for you, and what was it like compared to Grand Final Day? Because you had played in a few Grand Finals.
Very hard to compare the two. I mean, it is an occasion, so there's a build up to it. There's an energy about the day, and I think it's really symbolic. So to be anytime you're a part of something symbolic and you get a chance to go and play a great game like Australian rules football, you should feel really proud to be a part of that. So there's certainly some significance to it. With regards to comparing it to finals, I find it's different. It's different.
Okay.
There's the atmosphere. There's the build up.
You
Uh,
get up for it, but different sort of thing.
it's different. Yeah, yeah, it's different. I can't really articulate how, but there is a
That's fair.
difference to it. In terms of one that stands out, there's probably not one that stands out. I mean, yeah, we had some fantastic victories. I think we won a game in the wet one year. I can't remember what year it was, but I think Essendon, regardless of where Essendon and Collingwood were on the ladder, they were always really tight tussles.
Always, always. Yep.
Yeah, and I think Mick and Sheeds did an unbelievable job of making sure that they built the game up really well. I guess probably one of my one of my memories, not a good one, is I think Paddy Ryder might have won the Anzac Day medal playing against me one year. I think he had 14 tackles.
Oh,
And he was only a young player coming through. He was fantastic on the day, and I think we might have lost that one. So that one stands out for a few of the wrong reasons, but yeah, really fortunate to be a part of those days. That's for sure.
oh, absolutely. I know for myself, I hold Anzac Day um, for the game day in particular, because Collingwood, in massive, massive high regard, I always make sure I'm home or wherever I am, I can watch it. It's such an amazing thing. Now, at the end of 2010, you jetted up to the Gold Coast to play for the Gold Coast Suns. What was it like with the atmosphere of that club in compared to Collingwood, and in general, fresh start sort of thing? What was it like for you?
Yeah, I was chalk and cheese. I mean, you go from arguably the biggest club in the land, not only football related, but in any code. And then you're going up to a foundation club that's starting from scratch. And I guess my motivation to go up there, firstly, I had a good relationship with Guy McKenna, who was the inaugural coach up there.
Mm-hmm.
My motivation to go up there was probably more around moving into coaching, and what I thought was to go up there and experience working with such a young group. And I think getting out of Melbourne was an appealing thing to do at the time as well. But yeah, I just sort of felt like I needed to get out of Melbourne. Don't have any regrets about it. I guess there's always a party that probably would like to finish a one club player, but I think my time at the Pies then had probably come to a close, and it was such a steep learning curve up on the Gold Coast. But again, you move into another environment, you learn so much about yourself, you learn so much about building a footy club, what that entails, what that takes. And I was fortunate that Guy McKenna gave me a chance to start, I guess, in many ways, my coaching journey, and work with a young group, and try and help develop some of those players.
Absolutely. And that sounds like it definitely benefited you, not just as a coach, but also, as you said, as a foundation club. You would have seen a bid that would have actually helped benefit you for this year with the Bull Ants, bringing them back, sort of thing.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Absolutely. And even when I got to Carlton, I mean, I got there when Brendan Bolton started. So that was, in effect, a complete reset as well. The list turnover that happened there over 2 or 3 year period was huge. So, yeah, it did. And it makes you reflect on your own journey and things that you do differently, and the interactions you've had with coaches, and how you'd handle certain situations. And, spending 2 years up there as a player, and then another 2 years as a development coach up there was for me was a great grounding for my coaching. That's for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Now, steering a bit away from your playing, now to some fun sort of questions. Who was the biggest pest at at Collingwood and at the Gold Coast? Whether it was because they were a prankster or just they wouldn't shut up during training, or sort of thing.
Well, at the Pies, obviously the Rat Pack were in full flight. So, and they weren't. I wouldn't consider them pests. They were
No,
just they were full of energy. Like
just
Heath,
larrikins.
they were larrikins. Heath Shaw, Benny Johnson, Alan Didak, and Swanee. They're the four that sort of spring to mind, and they just had great energy. They were very good for the group in many respects. I know they probably did a lot of things off field in terms of going out and all that type of thing that might be a bit more frowned upon these days. But when they were there, they worked incredibly hard, and they were
They earned that time to go to the pub.
well, they did. And look, most players do, to be honest. I
Yeah,
think they were just
absolutely.
on a different level, and they were a group that really helped drive the club towards a premiership in 2010.
Yeah, nah, for sure. And what about at Gold Coast? Was there a certain player or players?
Oh, no, not that fit into the pest category. But again, like fortunate enough, I've got a really good relationship with Tom Lynch. Got a good relationship with Stephen May. Charlie Dixon was there at the time. He went to Port Adelaide. Jager O'Meara was there. David
Yep.
Swallow was still up there. So, built really strong relationships with some of those guys. And then, like Campbell Brown's one of my favourite people in footy.
Yep.
He's a larrikin, but he's got great energy. I sort of enjoy his company. So there's a couple there, but in terms of, I guess you got to remember they were such a young group as well, so they're probably they're probably developed into pests now.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's honestly fair enough. Who was the best sledger? Don't need to mention the sledge that they said, if it's not safe. But who was, you'd always be hearing it a bit of this every game.
Best sledger. Geez, it's a tough one. Like not sure. Not sure I got sledged a lot, and if I did, I didn't really register with me.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'm not. That's a difficult one. No one springs to mind. Yeah.
Okay. Was there any teammate, whether at Collingwood or Gold Coast, that you knew had a good sledge on them?
Um, Nick Maxwell wasn't too bad.
Oh,
Nick
he
Maxwell,
seems like it. He gave off that
yeah,
vibe. Yeah.
yeah, he was okay. And look, he used to cop it a bit himself, and
Yeah.
he was always prepared to dish it out again. So yeah, he wasn't too bad. Yeah.
No, that's cool. That's cool. Wrapping it up, we've got just a few more quick topics. Um, After you finished up, I'm probably pronouncing this wrong, but Tadioun,
Yeah.
probably saying that wrong.
Uh,
FC, you won a premiership with them in 2018. What was it like?
yeah, it was fun. I mean, when I retired, the last thing I wanted to do was play footy.
Yep.
My first season out of retirement, I went back and played at Mansfield. So I had a couple of mates up there that twisted my arm, and probably the best thing I ever did. So I sort of felt like I'd gone full circle, playing junior footy, coming through and having an AFL career, and then finishing at Mansfield.
Yep.
And then when I got to Carlton, a good friend of mine, Matthew Pell, who was in the high performance area, somehow or another, he convinced me to go down to Tadioun and play a few games with him.
Yep.
I never heard of Tadioun, had no idea where it was.
I never heard of him until now either.
Yeah, so, but Tadioun's literally. I remember driving down there for the first game, and in the car with Pelly, and I remember we didn't know where we were. We were just in these fields, like in open paddocks, big acreage, and Pelly rings the president of the footy club and said, "Mate, we think we're on the right track, but where are we? Where's this town?" He said, "No, there's no town, mate." He said, "What road are you on?" We told him. He said, "Keep driving 5K down the road." He said, "On the left-hand side, you'll see a big paddock with some machinery in it, and on the right-hand side, there'll be a footy ground."
That's a
And
straight up country team for sure.
that was Tadioun.
Wow.
I think I played 6 or 8 games there. We won a premiership. Again, like the community side of those types of footy
Yeah.
clubs are just unbelievable. So great people, Unfortunately, I'm living in Melbourne, working full time with Carlton. Couldn't spend the time I would like to have spent there, and just got around a few more people and be there a
Yeah.
bit more often. But they embraced myself and Matty Pell, and we had a good time. It was good fun.
Now that's awesome to hear. Now, two more topics I've got. Who was the toughest opponent to go up against? Whether it was for strength or skill, or who would that have been for you?
So Dean Cox was a difficult opponent. I remember in my first couple of years too, I was rucking against players like Scott Wine, Paul Salmon,
Spider Everett,
Matty,
even
Matty Primus, Spider Everett, um, Johnny Barnes. There was a heap of them.
massive crop.
Yeah, and they all had probably 15, 20 kilos on me. So that was a
Uh,
challenge. But Dean Cox was a super player. The one who I enjoyed playing against, who wasn't a traditional ruckman, was Adam Goods. I think he
yeah,
had a year where he won a Brownlow, basically playing as a ruck / another on baller. And his ability to run and cover the ground, I sort of enjoyed playing on him.
like it challenged you personally as a player, sort of thing.
He's just different. He was a hard match up. He's athletic. He could jump. He ran, and that's probably the way I like to play a bit too. I wasn't dominant in the hitouts, but I like to get around the ground a bit.
Yep.
But I just thought that he was a fantastic player, Adam Goods, and he always, for that year or 18 months he played in the ruck, he was a really challenging matchup.
Oh, absolutely. And my last question is, who do you think is the dark horse, not necessarily the smoky, like the shoe in for the grand final, but who do you think if we should keep our eye on at the moment to probably make the grand final?
Oh, um, I think I like how Brisbane are going about it. I think
Hmm.
their midfield's deep. I think their forward line with Hipwood and Danaher looks pretty potent. Charlie Cameron can kick goals.
Mitch Robinson's on fire.
Robinson's playing well, so I don't mind the Lions. I still think Port Adelaide have got another gear. I don't think they're playing great footy at the moment, but I think Kenny Hinkley's a great coach, and I think they've got a pretty good list, and still think they've got some scope. They're probably the two, but right now you'd have to. I don't know. Geelong are an interesting one. I mean,
Mm,
you look at Hawkins and Cameron in that front half. That's a pretty dangerous forward line. So I'm probably sitting on the fence a bit, but yeah, there's three teams there that, apart from the obvious ones in the Doggies and Melbourne,
yeah.
there's three teams that I think are going to be pretty dangerous.
Now that's fair enough. And last topic I've got is, what is your personal highlight looking back on your career?
Uh, um, oh, the grand finals, so 02 and 03, having got the chance to play in them.
Hmm.
2010's a highlight, just being at the club. Disappointed I wasn't a part of it, of course, but being there is a
Still
highlight.
played your part, sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah, and when you're at a place for 11 years, you are connected to it, and Collingwood, I feel like, is my footy club and it's my home. It's where I played most of my footy, so I do feel connected to that. And then probably the playing for Victoria in the Hall of Fame match in 2007, I think it
Yeah,
was.
that would have been awesome.
That was an individual highlight as well. But I really just being able to have a little bit of longevity in the game as a player. But the game's been really good to me. Like, I'm thankful to have been a part of it. I'd love to think I can be a part of it for a lot longer. Coaching's a real passion of mine now, so I want to try and take that as far as I can.
Can we see you as one of, sometime in the next 10 years, you as a coach for Collingwood, do you reckon?
Well, I don't know. I don't know what it all holds. I mean, at the moment, I'm coaching the Bull Ants in the VFL. And I guess off the back of this year, I'll start to navigate another path, and the next step might be to stay at the Bull Ants. I'm not sure, but there might be other opportunities that open up. But I'm sort of pretty driven around the coaching side of things, and I'd like to see where that can go. But the landscape at AFL level with COVID and the soft cap caps and cats and all the things like that, it makes it a little bit more uncertain than what it once was. But still very passionate about footy and thankful to have some longevity in the
Again,
game.
I want to thank you very much for joining me on the Final Tackle podcast. Is there anything you would, or anyone, or any organization or business that you would like to plug at, at the moment for the end of the episode?
No, not specifically, no, but I appreciate that opportunity. No, as I said, like, thanks for having me on. I sort of enjoyed talking and reflecting a little bit on my time in footy. And yeah, look, hopefully, uh, you know, COVID stays away, footy at community level and
Fingers crossed.
AFL level can get back to normal. But no, I appreciate you having me on, mate. And yeah, hopefully the Pies can rebound pretty quickly and get back up the ladder.